and welcome to Tuesday's edition of the dceu Daily. On today's show, I will be reacting to the reveal of the Batwoman costume. We'll be discussing and reading what Mark Guggenheim had to say about HBO Max's Green Lantern TV show, and then finally we'll be discussing the evolution of Superman and Batman in the Snyderverse. Let's go. Right. It was revealed. Here it is. This is one design of the Batwoman costume there. Now, there are others, by the way, so let's take a look at them. I think it looks really good, by the way. I actually quite like it. So let's have a look. I can't find it now, but no, there's more. There we go. So we've got a better view here. And there you have it. So look, I think it looks really, really, really good. I like the design. The problem is, for me, the only drawback of this design is it makes her look really short and unimposing. And I suppose to be Batwoman, you have to be quite intimidating. I suppose it's not about what you look like, but you want to scare the villains, don't you? So let's take a look on what the actor said about all this. So let's go back. And this is what she had to say. Javika Leslie reacts to the new Batsuit for Batwoman Season 2. I felt it was important that viewers could tell by the silhouette that Batwoman was a black girl. With the form-fitting suit and beautiful afro, we definitely nailed it. Well, you know, you give with one hand and you take away with the other, don't you? Sorry, but isn't the whole point that nobody knows who you are, so you can be a crime fighter and protect your identity and protect the people that you know and love in your personal life? So why is it actually important to show that she's a black woman? But again, these are the same people working on Superman and Lois as well. You know, let's be honest about this. Ruby Rose lost her job, not because her acting ability, and I think Ruby Rose's casting is one of the worst in superhero history. I thought she went through season 1 of Batwoman like someone who was late for her tea break. I thought she was absolutely terrible and deserved to lose her job. But the point being, the only reason she was cast was because she was an LGBTQ woman, right? But a white LGBTQ woman wasn't enough for these people. So they had to find a black LGBTQ woman, right? And that's the reason they sacked Ruby. So even though I didn't like Ruby Rose's casting as Batwoman, as a human being, I do have empathy with her losing her job, pretty much because of the colour of her skin. And this is how the entertainment industry is now run. And for me, it's hugely disappointing. I'm hoping that Batwoman Season 2 will be a better season, that we look at this character with more emotion. We like her. I didn't feel I liked Ruby Rose's Batwoman, and I really want to like it. But we are in an atmosphere and an arena now, very, very political, and it's not about entertaining people. It's about making dumb quotes like this. Now, of course, Javika Leslie had nothing to do with the design of this costume. It was given to her. She was given a script to come out publicly and say this crap. And it is crap, and it's hugely disappointing. Are you disappointed that comic book writer Mark Guggenheim has left the Arrowverse? Well, have no fear, because he's going to be working on the Green Lantern TV show that's going to be exclusively on HBO Max, and this is what he had to say. Green Lantern will be written like a TV show, but produced like a movie, says Guggenheim. HBO Max's upcoming Green Lantern series will be written like a TV show, but feature production values of a feature film, according to producer Mark Guggenheim. Before they redefined superheroes on TV with Arrow and its universe of interconnected spin-offs, writer-producers Mark Guggenheim and Greg Berlanti were part of the 2011 Green Lantern movie. That film failed to connect with an audience, and it's no secret that there were pretty significant changes made to Guggenheim's script along that way. But a track record of almost a decade of hits with DC properties has earned them, along with Green Lantern producer Jeff Johns, another chance to prove that DC's Ringslinger can work as a live-action property. Of course it can work. It's not the character's fault. Listen, I think the film's good. I think the film's good. I think the CGI costumes are not good. But I think the rest of the film isn't that bad. I don't know why they messed with Guggenheim's original story. If anyone knows Green Lantern, it's Guggenheim and Johns. So that's interesting. Guggenheim commented briefly on the series during a panel recorded for Comic-Con International website. The panel, which this reporter hosted, was released today as part of the Sam Storytelling Across Media one-day mini-conference. I happen to believe, and this is not a universally held opinion, that you can't do a 10-hour show or an 8-hour episode show like an 8-hour movie, Guggenheim said. I don't think that works. When I see it done, there's always some flabby episodes in the middle. I think you have to approach it like a TV series and approach each episode like its own entity, even though it's streaming. Even though hopefully people will binge it, you've got to make each episode a satisfying meal. You've got to look at it with a different tempo than you would have in a 2-hour movie. That being said, certainly the show for HBO Max that we're all working on, we are approaching it with the production ambitions of a movie, so we're writing it like a TV show, but we're hoping to produce it like a film. The series will be showrun by Seth Grahame-Smith, and will reportedly centre on a number of Green Lanterns, including Alan Scott, Jessica Cruz and Sinestro. It is expected to go into production in 2021, although specific dates have not yet been announced. They are certainly aware of their legacy with the character and eager to do something special to prove doubters wrong. We're returning to the scene of the crime, Guggenheim joked, poking fun at the Green Lantern film just as star Ryan Reynolds has done numerous times over the years. Well, that's interesting. That's interesting. So, basically, produced like a film, but made like a TV series. I actually like what Guggenheim said. If you take his quote out of context, it says, oh, well, it's done like a film, but it's written like a TV show. That's worrying. But actually, it's not worrying, because he's right. What he wants to avoid is fillers. And I think we did see fillers in Game of Thrones. We have seen fillers in The Walking Dead and shows like that. So it's important to have the quality of a movie, but be able to fill out the episodes to make them interesting. To have 8 to 10 episodes, it's not that many, actually, and I'm happy. I don't want a 25 to 35 episode series. It's just not possible to fill out a season, and you just waste a lot of time. But with all these characters in it, you could even do a character episode. You could do a Jessica Cruz episode. You could do a Sinestro episode. And so there's some really good ways that they can do this. So, yes, I'm really, really excited about the Green Lantern TV show. And there's a lot of talk about Green Lantern right now. We keep on talking about the Ryan Reynolds rumours. Someone just said, and I read this, and I thought it's kind of interesting, maybe he's playing games with Feige and Marvel to scare them into giving him that contract. Now, that's interesting. The modern movie audience is really hard to please, and I don't think it's because they're more intelligent than we were in the late 70s, 80s, 90s and early noughties, when films actually were really, really good. And, you know, from 2001 really to about 2010, TV shows had evolved as well. I think those shows like Alias and Lost and Smallville, much bigger quality, Prison Break, than the streaming shows we get now, that are mired in political correctness and virtue signalling. And, you know, it's, for me, it's not, the entertainment industry isn't what it should be as a whole. But I think modern audiences are hard to please. I think what happened with the Snyderverse is modern audiences wanted a simple, you know, DCEU, very Marvelized, rather than something complex and interesting and very action-packed as well, by the way. But the evolution of the Snyderverse, the evolution of Superman and Batman within the Snyderverse is a beautiful thing if you have the intellect and patience to watch it. Me and my brother were talking on the phone yesterday and saying that the modern audiences just weren't patient enough to wait to see what Snyder was trying to do. There's this whole conversation about deconstructing Superman and Batman, which Snyder and Terrio certainly did in BVS. But the plan was never to keep them deconstructed. The plan was to reconstruct them. And they were reconstructed in the third act of BVS beautifully. And, you know, the reconstruction after the deconstruction was going to continue in all 2 or 3 Justice League movies. And it's also interesting, was there ever supposed to be 3 Justice League movies? Wasn't there supposed to be 2? Not sure. So that's confusing as well. But anyway, let's talk about this. And so what you have is a story, a legacy story, an arc about Superman and Batman. So we start off with Superman's legacy in Man of Steel, which I'll be watching later on, and I've got it prepped and ready, as you can see. Man of Steel really is the character-driven, gritty, realistic story about how an alien comes to our world and is rejected. But then we need him because a bigger threat from his own planet is coming. But then in the next film, there's the consequences of the destruction that happened in the first story because of that. And unfortunately, Zod's not around to take the blame. So what are people doing? They're blaming Superman. So Lex Luthor sees this unfold. Now, we don't see Lex in the first film, but off screen in the first film, he sees this and he cleans up Metropolis. Of course, he's not doing this just to be nice. He doesn't like what Superman represents. Superman is power, and this intimidates people like Lex Luthor because he wants to have the power. He wants to be the hero. In fact, he wants to be the 6-foot, good-looking guy who's also got the power of a god. But Lex Luthor's never going to be that man. So he has to take the next best thing. So he manipulates them both in the sequel. But when you look at this story, we see the beginning arc of Superman. Then we meet Batman not near the end of his career, but he's so old now. He's so cynical and tired and angry. You know, he's lost Dick Grayson, and that's referred in BVS as well. So he's very angry. And the last straw really is the Battle of Metropolis and the Battle of Smallville. He's seen what's happened in Metropolis firsthand. He's there in the beginning of the film. To see his point of view of that is a beautiful thing, by the way. Probably one of the best superhero movie openings in terms of BVS that I've ever seen. It's amazing. First, we get the beautiful life thing. Then we get his point of view of the Battle of Metropolis. And I love that bit when he's embracing the girl because she's lost her mother. He looks up and sees Superman and Zod fighting. The anger in his face is there to see, and it unravels what we're going to see within this movie. He decides that Superman is a threat and he must die. You can't really say that Batman is wrong. Batman hasn't read any comic books with Superman or watched any of the films. He doesn't know that Superman is actually a hero. He sees him as an alien threat. And in real life, we would all see him as that. Some of us would embrace him as a hero. Some of us wouldn't. And I think one of the biggest arcs in this film, BVS, which is beautiful, is actually the guy who becomes disabled because of what happens. And I think that's amazing as well. You know, he is crippled because of the Battle of Metropolis, and I forgot his name, and he's an employee of Bruce Wayne. That arc, very short, very sweet, but it's interesting. He hates Superman. He holds Superman responsible for what's happened to him and that he's lost his family. So again, a very interesting arc there, how different people see Superman. You see, Superman, since his inception, has always shaped the lives of humanity because he saves a lot of people, but he also dooms other people without knowing it. So it's an interesting conversation. I love the Metallo episode of Smallville when John Corbin says to him, "What gives you the right to change men's fate?" I love that. That is who Superman is. Superman saves the people on the bus, which creates another situation, and ultimately it causes the loss of John Corbin's family, right, in Smallville. We're not talking about Smallville, we're talking about the Snyderverse. So Superman has always been a character that changes your fate through saving you, through stopping one thing from happening, which means another bad thing could happen. But Superman isn't isn't in control of all the elements. He's just trying to do the right thing. And for people who do stand there and do the right thing, there will always be consequences. They will always create enemies and villains through their heroics. And I think this is part of the narrative that Snyder and Terrio are trying to tell us in BVS. And I think this is the thing that people refuse to understand. This is a deep story. And it's taken from other deep stories and it's evolved upon. And I think that's the thing. That's what's so amazing about the Snyderverse. And one of the heartbreaking things for me was not to see that evolution continue in Zack Snyder's Justice League, instead seeing Justice League. Now, Justice League is a Marvelized movie, plain and simple. It doesn't have depth. It doesn't have the depth of BVS or MOS. And it cuts down the narrative that Zack was telling since Man of Steel. And it didn't work, by the way, because the Snyderverse had more fans than Warner Brothers gave it credit for. They thought that the Snyderverse was universally hated by everyone because no one had spoken out initially. It was only after Justice League that we all stood up to be counted. And all of a sudden, they're seeing that people did like this verse. It wasn't all hate. And that really echoes what's going on within the films as well. But this is a deep evolution of Superman and Batman. We see Superman from his beginning. We meet Batman when he's been Batman for years. And we're going to see this story continue in Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I think this is what's so amazing about the Snyderverse and his arc and the story that he's telling. That superheroes, like everyone else, are just people. Whether they're aliens or human beings, they are fallible. They're not perfect. But at the end of the day, they're putting themselves out there. And all the public that look down on them and judge them, just like, hey, I'm doing this video, and then someone comes in the comments and hates on me. But he or she hasn't got a profile picture. They're too scared to put themselves out there themselves. But still, they're screaming and shouting about my performance. It's not about my performance. It's about I'm actually expressing myself and putting myself out there. And guess what? You're not. And that is up to you. But it's a bit cowardly to hide away and start criticising somebody else who's brave enough to put themselves out there. And I think this is the real discussion of the Snyderverse. These are people who stand up to be counted. Because not only do we begin with Superman, and then we see Batman in BVS, and then we see Wonder Woman in BVS, and then we get to see her expanded origin, which is amazing. Then we get to see Aquaman's expanded origin in the Aquaman movie. Now, that movie was going to be very different within the Snyderverse platform, but of course, Walter Hamada made changes. But ultimately, I think films like MOS, BVS, Wonder Woman, even Suicide Squad, and Aquaman. Did I say Wonder Woman as well? Yeah, all those films, I think, are brilliant superhero movies that will stand the test of time because it isn't just about a nod and a wink. They're telling deeper stories. The Aquaman story from James Wan is about someone from another world, brought up on another world, and he wants to protect his adopted home. He's never felt connected to Atlantis. And when he first goes there and sees it, the look on his face, he's very insecure about what he's seeing, but he knows he's seeing a stunning world. So they're all amazing stories for me. And the casting is just as compelling as the stories that Snyder was attempting to tell. Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, people like Gal Gadot, right? People like Jason Momoa. Jason Momoa wouldn't have been anyone's pick to play Aquaman. Jesse Eisenberg wouldn't have been anyone's pick, including mine, to play Lex Luthor. But they work within the framework of what Snyder was trying to do. This is the evolution of the way superhero movies will be done in the future. Yes, Snyder lit the blue touch paper and he got a lot of shit for it, but now we're seeing the boys. And we are going to see other studios and other creatives doing their own things, doing something a little different with these superhero stories. Because the more popular they get, the more variety you're going to need to keep them popular. Comment down below, like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. See you again soon.